conversations surrounding the penetration of African businesses through the building of institutions dominated the just concluded 57th Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association. Thank you for joining us as we bring you highlights of an event which saw a convergence of some of Africa's most respected legal luminaries and business minds. I am Christy Cole-Pokuola. No wigs, no gowns. This glamorous gathering of Nigeria's justice system at the Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association looked to address issues influencing the penetration of African businesses. The event spanned a 5-day period. The conference has been described by many of the guests who came in from all over the world as the first major attempt at economic intervention by Nigeria's legal system.
I think the exciting thing about the conference is really to see how our lawyers have become really interested, not only in the content of the conference, which has been spectacular. We have so many interested resource persons and very many educative sessions, and the engagement has been unprecedented.
Let me congratulate Nigeria Bar Association, President Nigeria Bar Association, and his colleagues for organizing this wonderful seminar that had attracted over 12,000 participants, one of the largest of such seminars I've seen in recent time. In fact, World Economic Forum, the summer session in South Africa doesn't even attract this number of participants. This should be encouraged, and we feel very proud for the opportunity to partner with them and participate in this seminar.
We all sponsor the conference because it has something to do with business. And I think this has actually opened up, MBA for business.
Law is really the pillar stone of good governance. And the Nigerian Bar Association is really a corner piece, a sounding board, a voice of truth and reason to the administration and also to the entire society.
Now, representing the military as one of the strongest institutions in Nigeria, certainly the greatest foundation we have for that is law. So if our laws are not correct, certainly our institutions will also be faulty. Coming to this conference on revitalizing or strengthening institutions is very important for the military. If you listen to the speech of the Vice President, the keynote speech, he dwelt so much on the past experiences our institution went through, especially in our procurement processes. We believe that strengthening our legal processes and on all other things we do will in no way go a long way in strengthening the institution of the military.
Governance is a very interesting thing, particularly in this environment. If you don't get a feedback, you never know how well you're doing, because the choristers in the government will tell you you're doing wonderfully well. But you see, the consciousness in government is not attuned towards the consumer, which is the public. It's attuned towards themselves. And so you have a lot of self-glorification going on, right? And here you get to hear the bare truth.
It serves as a platform for a conversation right across the board, not just amongst lawyers, but lawyers, captains of industry, government, and the Nigerian Bar Association is particularly well positioned to host and ignite that sort of conversation because of the unique position, I have to say, that lawyers have in society.
I think that's one of our biggest challenges in this country is the overemphasis on individuals and instead of institutions. The need to deepen the respect and capacity of institutions is glaring. And I think conferences like this that put that conversation back on the table are important to make sure that we all focus on that part of our development.
It's a world-class conference in terms of content, in terms of planning, in terms of delivery. I give the kudos to my very good friend and partner in progress, A.B. Mahmood. When he looked for the elections, he said he was going to bring a brave new bar. And you can see that brave new bar has landed. I mean, he set a very tall order for those who will take over from him. But this is what our country should be. I mean, we should look for big, bold, fast results. You know, we should be ambitious. We should aim to be the best in the world. I mean, there's no reason why the bar in Nigeria, which has been there since the 1930s, you know, cannot be the best. So this is recovering Nigeria to the status it's supposed to be. And I'm really very proud to be associated with the MBA and to work with them on this conference.
Activities at the 57th Annual General Conference of Nigerian Bar Association also involved some breakout sessions. After the break, we'll get to see what some of these sessions focused on. You're watching highlights of the just concluded Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association. Now, about 25 breakout sessions were held across the 5-day event, focusing on discussions of the roadmap for Nigeria's economic recovery, military businesses, and the rise of the digital economy in line with their relationship with media firms. Let's now get a feel of some of these conversations. The first panel session presented an opportunity to get answers directly from Nigeria's Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, a senior advocate of Nigeria himself, who evaluated the Nigerian system and gave an assessment of the country's economic situation.
I think those foundations are important because, first, we were dealing with a mono economy, mono export, mono revenue practically. But more importantly, we're also dealing with a system of public finance that was essentially opaque and, if you like, a fair amount of corruption, perhaps even so much corruption in some cases that it was difficult to, in some cases, even discover how it was that the economy survived the extent of that corruption. So I think really the point is that we're rebuilding that economy. We've laid what I believe is a very solid foundation for the rebuilding of the economy, especially the public finance system. Mm-hmm. Beginning, of course, with ensuring that we block all of the loopholes. We have continuous audits now. We have an efficiency unit that ensures that there is efficiency in government expenditure. We have the TSA, the Treasury Single Account, that ensures that we're able to monitor government spending and government revenues closely. We're modifying, the tax system so that it's more efficient and you can collect revenues easier. And also, we've introduced a number of executive orders. One looking at transparency in government services, another looking at annual budgets of the small agencies, another on voluntary assets declaration, and one on local content, encouraging local content. I think really where we're at is a situation where we've cleared the mess, we've cleared the debris, and we are laying solid foundations for modernizing the Nigerian economy.
Subsequent breakout sessions were in line with the event's theme, African Business, Penetrating Through Institution Building. These sessions covered, analyzed, and projected measures to strengthen institutions across Nigeria and create legal frameworks across private and public sectors.
Looking at how we can take advantage of what is coming to this part of the world, which is the fourth industrial revolution. And one thing that is clear is that without institutions, even the society itself will not survive. Societies survive because they have institutions behind them.
If you look across the continent, I guess one of the greatest problems we have is the absence of strong institutions. And so it's affecting several things. It's affecting foreign direct investments. It's affecting capacity building in terms of our people. It's affecting the nature of reforms from a legal standpoint, and therefore the rate of growth of GDP in spite of all the great opportunities that we have.
The legal framework is important for many reasons. So, for example, without intellectual property, it's difficult to create value in technological innovation. Here we have a system that does have patents and licensing, but we don't have adequate inspections. We also tend to think about innovations only within the Nigerian sphere. We need to think about our innovations within not just the Nigerian sphere, but within a global sphere, in which we derive value not just from our own environmental context, but we think globally in how we derive value from our innovations.
Many infrastructural projects are not bankable. So that's one of the reasons of this seminar. How do we de-risk such risk associated with such projects? How do we ameliorate the risk? How do we mitigate the risk? In fact, how do we de-risk them? And such projects must be bankable before we could fund them. And to be able to de-risk them requires government functionaries' participation in terms of there has to be the rule of law, there has to be corporate governance, there has to be changes in government policies, the sovereignty, political will, and also there are also political risk in some of the infrastructural projects because government may decide that they have a completely different policy and altogether, which may hurt or harm the initial objective of the infrastructural project.
Well, if you look at the country, you know that we have a huge deficit in the supply of infrastructure relative to what the country needs. Based upon our national aspiration as a country that wants to become a top 20 economy. So clearly, we need to actually have a laser focus on this topic, not just in terms of articulating what is needed, but the how. I think everybody understands that there is a gap, and the question now is how do we actually execute?
For the first time in the history of the Bar Association, I think this is the most intellectual and patriotic conference. Why do I say this? Because of the fact that it really addresses the core of the Nigerian economic problems. Looking at debt, sustainability, looking at debt vis-a-vis development, looking at debt vis-a-vis employment. So it is the main issue today. It's the topical issue in Nigeria today. And for the Bar Association, that is ordinarily into jurisprudence, to veer into socio-economic development of Nigeria, I think is commendable.
This section is a military impact of military on economic development. But we felt that without internal security, there cannot be economic development. There cannot even be military business.
If you look at most African countries, Nigeria being the flag bearer, if you look at the quality of economic governance from the time of independence up till this present time, we have seen an ever worsening set of outcomes as a result of public policy. Indeed, the expectation between the compact of those who are governed and those who govern them in Nigeria is such that the governed no longer expect anything good to come out of public policy. Unfortunately, we have accepted it as the lot of Africa. And at the end of the day, who chooses those who govern us? Who? What have we done about it?
We need help to grow. Well, we Nigerians are telling you that we need your help to grow. Because your profession can completely determine how far this scourge of corruption is tackled in this country. We need your help. It's your help that we need. We cannot build any credible institutions in this country until the legal profession decides that it will be so.
Lectures that have been given here have been very, very thought-provoking, and I think will go a long way to helping the government to give us a very good country.
When you listen to experts in various fields, when you listen to people who really know a thing or two about that field that they're speaking about,
It also opens your own vista, it opens your own window, and you'll definitely be better off for it.
There has never ever been a gathering like this, in the country. And I think next one, they will plan it better and we will support them as much as possible.
Away from the breakout session, the NBA also did make provisions for the invited guests to enjoy some social activities, some of which included the opening of the Friendship Center, the NBA novelty mat, psychometric tests, medical tests, among others. Medics screened about 400 candidates for cardiovascular symptoms. Medical and social exercises were aimed at examining and improving the lawyers' health statuses.
If you look at the statistics, the lawyers are the ones that tend to really have a higher risk factor and even sudden death. So because of that, Tri-State was invited to come and be part of this organization so that we can try to do what they call the medical screening to see who is in trouble or who is already in trouble or who may potentially be in trouble and try to really treat them. The other services include full cardiac screening from examination to EKG, to ultrasound of the heart, and all the laboratories that you may need. Then in addition to that, we identify those people who have emergency situation and we are treating them. You just call me now, there's a gentleman that have hypertensive emergency. He didn't know that he have that, but he's already stepping stone of having stroke. Blood pressure was like about 220, so that is really horrible. Now we have the medication, so the blood pressure just came down to about 180 now. And we admit, some of them we admitted, overnight just to make sure everything is fine.
The Nigerian Bar Association's 57th Annual General Conference 2017 was also an opportunity to showcase investment options within the country. Lagos, Ondo, Kano and Bauchi states were among the states profiled, all essentially targeted at opening the eyes of investors to the many business and growth opportunities lying within these states.
Why can't we use the export processing zone in Kano to produce all those garments that have been produced in Bangladesh and sell to Europe? We are only 5 hours from the Kano airport to central London by air is 5 hours. Okay? There is no reason why you can't come and invest. You've got the cotton there in Kano. You can have the farms, you can produce your cotton, you can spin it, you can weave it, you can produce the garments in Kano, put on a plane and take straight to Europe.
We are going to at least show to the world what we have and everybody will see it. We are trying to attract people to understand. I, for one, believe that, look, we must have a strong judiciary. And we are trying to build that up. That, look, have a judiciary that is totally independent. We had discussion with the chief judge, and I believe that, look, it all depends on whether we don't have money. It will be a first-line charge. Release the money, for instance, to judiciary, build a strong institution for judiciary. Now, I looked at issue of business, and I said, okay, I'm going to have ONDIPA, that's Ondo State Development Investment Agency. We call it ONDIPA. We have passed the law so that we are going to build an institution that will allow for ease of doing business.
We are doing a lot of networking as it is, and then we have a special session at which we are going to showcase the investment potentials and opportunities of Bauchi State. The state has, at the onset, determined for itself 3 major areas where it has comparative advantage. First is agriculture, because Bauchi State occupies about 49.2 thousand square kilometers of Nigeria's land. We are the 5th largest. We occupy 5.3% of the total land area, most of it arable land. So this is a very, very good resource that will attract investment.
A major highlight of the event was the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the NBA and the Nigerian Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission. The MOU guarantees that all policy statements emerging from the infrastructure discussion will be implemented.
Our commission is responsible for regulating public-private partnership for greenfield and brownfield infrastructure delivery in Nigeria. So we're very critical to solving Nigeria's infrastructure deficit. The MOU we have signed this evening is a really very important one. Now, a recent World Bank study did show that the most important concern investors have when they're making decisions to invest in infrastructure is protection of legal rights. It's a deal breaker. So what we have done here today is to sign an MOU that commits us and the MBA to work together to review the PPP law in Nigeria and make sure that we have an innovative and world-class PPP regulation and framework that is the most attractive in the world, so that the place where investors want to spend their money, whenever they think of infrastructure, they will think of Nigeria, because we're going to work with the MBA and put in place the most attractive, the most innovative, the most professional PPP legal and regulatory framework for infrastructure in Africa and hopefully around the world.
We are going to be looking at all the policy statements, and we are going to begin to take steps to implement all the things that we can implement. As you saw this evening, we signed an MOU with the Nigerian Infrastructure Regulatory Commission, and that is one of the follow-up discussions, and we're certainly going to pursue all the resolutions and all the decisions that have come out of this conference.
The Nigerian Bar Association is a professional body, it's not an arm of government. But we hope, because the government itself is here, the Chief Justice of Nigeria is here, the President of the Federal Republic is here, the state governors here, the legislators here, and then we have captains of business. So we hope that everybody will go back home and begin to practice those things that they've learned here.
The country is doing much better than expected. It's still in a very difficult situation. It's not so-called out of woods. There are still lots of hurdles to overcome. The economy is still struggling, but it's already recovering. And recovery is taking place quite well. And the government is doing quite good steps forward. And my takeaway will be that I'm very, very optimistic about Nigeria's future.
It's been a large one, and not just large, like I mentioned, to even have all conferees have tablets. It was a huge one. But with the goodwill of the president, the chairman of, also the chairman of the conference planning, that is Professor Ajayi, we've been able to do a lot. So we've had so many partners and sponsors, all state governors who are lawyers, all of them contributed. Dangote Group was a huge contributor to the conference. Lagos State Government, in fact, well, we're in Lagos, so they have to play a huge role. So we have so many that have contributed, and like I said, it's because of the goodwill. They have so much trust and belief in the persons involved and what they stand for, that they did not hesitate to just pour in the donations. So that was how we were able to pull this off, but it was not easy.
We have achieved something so spectacular that we ourselves are really concerned about the sustainability. But I can tell you, we have begun discussing and strategizing on how to maintain the standards and even improve it on it in the future conferences.
No doubt, memories from the 57th Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association will linger long. Conversations and activities have revolved around penetrating African businesses through the empowerment of institutions therein. More importantly, the conclusions and deals drawn from here are expected to immensely impact the legal and business environment. Thank you for watching. I am Christy Cole Bukwola.